A historic summit is on the horizon.
Шановні українці, українки, президент Трамп оголосив про підготовку своєї зустрічі з Путіним на Алясці. Дуже далеко від цієї війни, яка триває на нашій землі, проти нашого народу, яку все одно не закінчити без нас, без України.
Europe wants to see peace. The European leaders want to see peace. President Putin, I believe, wants to see peace, and Zelenskyy wants to see peace. Now, President Zelenskyy has to get all of his everything he needs, because he's going to have to get ready to sign something, and I think he is working hard to get that done.
Absolutely. Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin can sit across the table and talk. If you look at Donald Trump's track record, he's proven that he can sit down with America's toughest adversaries, North Korea and China and Russia, and he could do it from a position of strength. Talking does not mean capitulating. It just means advancing U.S. interests, and that's what Donald Trump is doing.
The interesting thing would be to see their body language, if this is something that we can actually see as it is ongoing. But yes, I believe that Trump, he's a great negotiator. He likes to come into a meeting and approach every chance that he has as being a way to make a deal.
Upcoming meeting, which is promised to happen in Alaska, I think it's in the interest of Putin more than of Trump. And I think definitely they can talk, definitely. And that would unfortunately make Putin look like a legitimate world leader, while in reality he's just a war criminal.
President Putin and President Trump are all set to sit across the table, a table with the map of Ukraine on it.
Well, you're looking at territory that's been fought over for 3.5 years with, a lot of Russians have died, a lot of Ukrainians have died. So we're looking at that, but we're actually looking to get some back and some swapping. It's complicated. It's actually nothing easy. It's very complicated, but we're going to get some back. We're going to get some switched. There'll be some swapping of territories to the betterment of both. And but we'll be talking about that either later or tomorrow or whatever.
Naturally, Zelenskyy is not ready to move an inch, but he is cautious in his dealing with the US president after nightmares from the past.
Звісно, ми не дамо Росії нагород за зроблене. Український народ заслуговує на мир, але всі партнери мають розуміти, що таке достойний мир. Цю війну треба закінчувати, і Росія має її закінчити. Росія її почала та затягує, не слухаючи ніякі дедлайни. І саме це проблема, а не щось інше. Відповідь на українське територіальне питання є вже в Конституції України. Відступати від цього ніхто не буде і не зможе. Дарувати свою землю окупанту українці не будуть. Україна готова до реальних рішень, які можуть дати мир. Будь-які рішення, які проти нас, будь-які рішення, які без України, вони одночасно і рішення проти миру. Вони нічого не дадуть. Це мертві рішення. Вони ніколи не спрацюють. А нам усім потрібен реальний, живий мир, який люди будуть поважати.
The question colder than the chilling winds of Alaska continues to remain. Can Trump convince Ukraine and EU to cede Donbass to Russia?
I think that what you're going to hear Donald Trump say over and over again to Vladimir Putin is that he is looking for outcomes that end the war and save lives. And ultimately, that's a conversation about, territory moving one way or another. That ultimately gets set at the negotiating table, certainly not in preconditions.
The reality is that Putin does not want Donbass, and it's not why he started this war, and it's not how he will agree to finish this war. It is just a game. And Putin actually he wants the whole Ukraine.
ceding any territory is going to be extremely difficult because we know that within the constitution of Ukraine, they cannot give up, cede any territory. And I understand that. We all understand that very much. So this is going to be a very, very big problem now.
Ukraine has said that they recognize that parts of the country will remain under Russian occupation under any settlement, and they will forego the right to regain those territories via military operation, to liberate them militarily. So they will leave that for a future diplomatic settlement. What Ukraine has said also clearly, though, is that they will not, under any circumstances, officially cede territory. They will not redraw the map. They will not hand territory officially over to Russia. So I think if Russia's demand is that it must have this.
While Zelenskyy is trying his best to get a seat at the table,
Дарувати свою землю окупанту українці не будуть. Україна готова до реальних рішень, які можуть дати мир. Будь-які рішення, які проти нас, будь-які рішення, які без України, вони одночасно і рішення проти миру. Вони нічого не дадуть. Це мертві рішення. Вони ніколи не спрацюють. А нам усім потрібен реальний, живий мир, який люди будуть поважати.
Trump, on the other hand, still believes Zelenskyy is not authorized to do certain things.
Well, he's going out and getting what he needs. You know, he's not authorized to do certain things. I said, well, you're going to have to get it fast because, you know, we're getting very close to a deal. And he's doing that, and he's working with the European nations, and they're terrific people, terrific leaders, NATO. And as you know, I became very friendly with them. They agreed to go from 2% to 5%. 2% that they didn't pay to 5% that they've already paid. It's trillions of dollars. So, you know, we're working together very closely. But no, in all fairness to President Zelenskyy, he's getting everything he needs to assuming we get something done. But I'll be meeting very shortly with President Putin.
Now, there was this problem earlier this year when Zelenskyy came to the White House and met with Trump. That did not go very well, and the meeting as became famous around the world of video that Trump basically had Zelenskyy leave.
If Donald Trump is successful, Vladimir Zelenskyy gets a path to peace, he gets security guarantees, and he gets a chance to rebuild his country that has been devastated after 3 years of war. It is much better for Zelenskyy to be part of a Trump-led solution than to be stuck in the current stalemate that ultimately is going to grind Ukraine into the ground.
Well, if Putin and Trump reach an agreement between themselves, which is very damaging for Ukraine, and if Ukraine then turns around and says, if Zelenskyy then turns around and says, no, I don't accept this, of course, that would put Zelenskyy potentially at odds with America. It would potentially mean that America would then turn around and say, okay, we're not going to help Ukraine anymore. We're not going to provide Ukraine with any military support. We're not going to provide Ukraine with financial support, diplomatic support, or even intelligence support, which they've been doing over the last 3.5 years. So it could mean a breach with the Americans. That would have a knock-on effect for Ukraine's relations with other NATO members, other the European partners of Ukraine.
While the war has been ongoing for 3 years, there is a sense of desperation in Trump.
I'll end that war between those two countries in 24 hours. It won't even take that long. I will get the war ended. I'll stop all of those lives from being wasted and lost. And there'll be no more bombing of Ukraine. There'll be no more bombing of Russia. And everybody will be happy.
That desperation to prove a point has now turned into blind ambition for Trump. Not for peace, but for prize.
I think President Trump deserved to have Nobel Peace Prize, and we will defend that, and we will promote for that, and that's obvious. So, and today's event, I think, is a very bright expression of that, and hopefully you will invite us to
Front row, you'll be front row.
yeah.
Thank you very much.
We are in favor.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm doing it because of I really, number one, I want to save lives. That's why I'm involved so much with Ukraine and Russia. It's saving lives of Russians and Ukrainians. I mean, it's not American lives. Now, I would say this, that war could have escalated in something much better. That could have been a world war. I think if we didn't come, Ukraine-Russia would have ended up being a world war. And I stopped that. That stopped. Now the only question is, when is it going to be settled? And it could be very soon.
This fits in with Donald Trump's agenda for his second term. Endless wars are bad for America. It drains resources, it spikes inflation, and frankly, it distracts Trump from America's real strategic interests. The goal that Donald Trump has said repeatedly is to stop the killing and to do so without the U.S. taxpayers having to write a blank check to Ukraine.
Trump thinks that he would be the one who will finish this war because he claims he's a peace president and he can solve global conflicts in the world and stop countries from having wars. So for him, it's clear why he agreed to meet Putin. Zelenskyy is not the person who, controls the war. He is democratically elected Ukrainian president, but he's commander-in-chief. But it's Ukrainian people, Ukrainian army. They decide whether to fight back, to protect their country, or to surrender to Russians. And Ukrainian people have decided to fight. And if Ukrainian people keep this decision and majority of Ukrainians, they don't plan to surrender to Russia. If, for example, Trump would sit down with Putin and decide, for example, I say in theory, that Kiev would become a Russian city, you understand, it would never happen because there are 40 million Ukrainians. And it's important what they think and what they feel.
Ukrainians are very skeptical about the summit meeting between Trump and Putin. They are concerned that Putin may be able to manipulate Trump. Putin is seen as a very skilled operator at this level, a very experienced statesman who is very skilled at manipulating, and Trump, on the contrary, is seen as someone who is very susceptible to flattery, very open to being manipulated via this sort of very personal approach to offer him compliments and flattery and to praise him and to win his confidence in this way. So there are concerns that Trump could be very vulnerable.
While Ukrainians have their own apprehensions, in Moscow preparations are in full swing, with Russian President Vladimir Putin even personally chairing the first meeting of the National Security Council in 5 years, his first since COVID-19 pandemic.
Уважаемые коллеги, мы обсудим сегодня некоторые вопросы региональной повестки дня, региональной политики, применительно, конечно, к обеспечению и решению вопросов безопасности, прежде всего. У нас два докладчика, Колокольцев Владимир Александрович и Бортников Александр Васильевич. Давайте начнем.
Since the arrival of Witkoff in Moscow last week, President Putin has also held several phone calls with both leaders in Beijing and in New Delhi. Briefing the two allies on the updates on the Ukraine front, things are moving fast for Putin.
I think it's very important to not rush to conclusions that this is going to be either a success or a failure. The bringing together was very strategic of Putin and Trump. The fact that they're meeting on U.S. territory in Alaska, somewhere in between Washington, D.C. and Moscow, is very strategic in its own right because there's an International Criminal Court warrant out for the arrest of Putin. And so at least this is showing the doors are opening, and I think that we should all be very thankful that at least we've got these two individuals, the heads of state, coming together to start some sort of process, and we hope that it's going to at least highlight what the differences are, what the people agree with, and then where we can go from there.
I anticipate the talks between the two to be candid, to be direct, and also to be transactional. This is not going to be a State Department scripted event. Trump, because he is a master negotiator, understands how to mix pressure with opportunity. I believe that he will keep Vladimir Putin off balance. And look, these two men know each other. I think that they know what each other's red lines are. And I think that, both want to achieve victory here. So I think it's going to be a really interesting battle between two countries' leaders.
Well, it's not clear yet whether Putin is prepared to make any sort of concessions. Putin's positions with regard to the invasion of Ukraine are still quite maximalist. He wishes to essentially establish control over Ukraine, and he wishes to hold not only the territories currently occupied by Russia, but also other areas that are claimed by Moscow. So it will be, I think, a lot will depend on whether Trump is able to influence Putin and convince him that it's in Russia's interests to downgrade its demands, its expectations, and accept some form of compromise.
This isn't Trump's first rodeo with Putin, and it's certainly not the first time Putin is meeting a US president. In the last quarter of a century, POTUS have changed, but Putin has been permanent. The date will be August 15th. The location is Alaska. Two men, one table, and the fate of a nation hanging in the balance. History won't be written in Alaska, but will be tested in Ukraine. For between ambition and peace lies the fate of a 3-year-long war.